Speaker, and I rise to speak in support of the Electoral Further Amendment Bill of 2026. And in my contribution, I'd just like to take a bit of a different approach and take a step back from the focus of what we've really been paying regard to today, because this bill really is about democracy. It goes to the very foundations and essence of what it means to live in a free, democratic society, country and state. And democracy, of course, is something that we shouldn't ever take for granted. It's something that's fragile. It's something that we all have a role to play in protecting, defending, preserving and sustaining. And it's something that hasn't come about by accident. It's something that's come about by centuries and thousands of years, arguably, of service and sacrifice and contributions of people from across public life and various parts of our community. On Anzac Day this year, I gave a speech that I'd like to touch on and I believe is very relevant in relation to this bill, because we wouldn't be here today in this democracy of Australia and indeed Victoria if it wasn't for the service and the sacrifice of our veterans community, the first of which served as a nation as the Anzacs combined forces at the Gallipoli landings on the shores of Turkey in Gallipoli, Çanakkale. And we had 20,000 Australians who served in Gallipoli. 9,000 lost their lives. And I had the privilege to visit Gallipoli as part of a Victorian parliamentary delegation a couple of years ago to pay tribute and homage to the veterans from my community. There was at least 60 that we could identify that came from the suburbs of Coburg and Brunswick who made the ultimate sacrifice and remained buried on the shores of Turkey. They fought to protect democracy, and so too did all the other veterans who have put up their hand to serve this country through subsequent conflicts and peacekeeping operations. Democracy came under attack again, of course, in World War II, through Nazi Germany, through the rise of hate, through the rise of vilification, violence against innocent people based on their religion, faith or culture. It was Western democratic forces that came together to push back and fight against Nazi Germany and liberate Europe and indeed free the world. But of course, as we fast forward to today, you can basically argue that democracy is very much under attack again in new ways than like never before. Autocracy is very much on the rise around the world. Just look around us in any corner of the world. Look at what's happening in Ukraine with the aggression happening there and Russia continuing to attack independent sovereign Ukraine and not seeking to withdraw. Look at what's happening in Iran. Just earlier today, I was very pleased to have welcomed a delegation from the Iranian Women's Association and local Iranian Persian community led by Nosrat Husseini, who briefed us members about the ongoing suppression, violence and persecution that innocent Iranians are suffering at the hands of the violent fundamentalist Islamic regime that still sustains there today. Look at what's happening in North Korea, where people continue to be persecuted and not being able to speak out against Kim Jong-un and his fundamentalist communist regime as well. Look at what's happening in Russia, where political opponents are still jailed and opposition leaders were previously jailed as well. The point is, Acting Speaker, that democracy, as I say, doesn't happen by accident. And as we look around the world, it is increasingly under attack, not just in traditional political ways, but in new technological ways. And we should not be letting the algorithm, for example, determine and be the only substantive influence in terms of how people think and how they're influenced to vote. Look at obviously a lot of positives with AI, but there's a lot of challenges there around when it comes to the political sphere as well. Look at the rise in misinformation, disinformation and fake news as well. We have a lot to be wary of and to fight back against and push back against as a community and as a state and as a country when it comes to protecting and preserving our democracy. And that's what, in many ways, this bill at a state Victorian level is about, because we are a country that is proudly democratic, where people have the right in Australia and in Victoria to think, feel and vote however they like, to believe in the God or not believe in a God that they choose to worship or not. And at a state level, there's so much we can control in this space, in the political environment, and one of the most fundamental spaces of public policy we can have a meaningful say in is through donation laws. Because it is through donation laws that we can sustain, to a large degree, the integrity, the transparency, the public confidence in our voting and democratic system here in a state. And back in 2018, of course, and that's why we're here today, but originally the original intent of the laws that were moved and passed here were to protect our democracy at a state level through the introduction of what really at the time were nation-leading reforms around donation caps, thresholds, declarations, reforms to nominated entities, public funding, increased transparency as well. But in saying that, of course, we can't ignore the decision of the High Court. That's why we're here today to, again, update and modernise these laws as soon as possible following on from that High Court decision. Because the High Court's decision did strike down Victoria's long-standing electoral integrity laws, leaving our states exposed to dark money in politics. And right now, money could be flowing, in the absence of these laws being in place, as they've been struck out, flowing from foreign billionaires into political party bank accounts with no limits, no disclosures and no oversight. And the government, through this bill that's before us now, will immediately move to restore Victoria's electoral integrity regime within the limits of the High Court ruling. And we can't allow anyone to exploit this current period to solicit huge donations and move money around secretly. And our legislation is designed to make sure that every party and every candidate will be accountable for every dollar they receive from this day forward, which was the original intent of the original legislation that were passed. But of course, we know the Liberals are fighting and opposing these changes as well, because they want to keep taking advantage of the void of legislation that's in place at the moment. They've got the Cormick Foundation that we know has $130 million sitting in it that they want to continue to, of course, access and grow for their own political advantage. They want to continue bringing in the money with no checks and balances from big business, from their billionaire mates, and who knows, even from people overseas as well. But again, I've got the High Court decision here that I've gone through as well, and it couldn't be any clearer from the 15th of April, where they say in their statement, today the High Court unanimously answered questions of law stated for its consideration in the special case to the effect that Part 12 of the Electoral Act 2002 here in Victoria is invalid because the part operating with the nominated entity exception, the definition of a gift of the Electoral Act, impermissibly burdens the implied freedom of political communication contrary to the Commonwealth Constitution. That was the decision, that's what we have to accept, and that's what we have to now respond to with these new laws. But we know the Liberals aren't the best when it comes to engaging and respecting and responding to court decisions, because they have been tied up in court cases themselves, amongst themselves, for the last couple of years, and indeed have been utilising donor money from the Liberals to sustain and fund those court cases. I've hit a nerve there, because that is exactly where we're going to, where the Liberals have been utilising funding from the Liberal Party to sustain and fund matters related to their own legal case amongst themselves, defamation cases. And we know the Liberal executive is pursuing this legal matter still, seeking further funding from the Liberal fundraising account to sustain further appeals. We know that for a fact. And I draw the House's attention to an article by Sharon Deary from the Herald Sun on the 28th of May, which was quoted, hopes of a pre-election peace still fades as Victorian Liberals infighting rages. And he quoted in the article here, a $1 million bill has emerged as the potential roadblock to hopes that the Victorian Liberal Party can shut down a looming Supreme Court battle that risks derailing its election campaign. The party is at war with itself in the Supreme Court over the controversial $1.55 million rescue loan paid for former leader, the member for Hawthorn, and members of the party's state executive have launched an unprecedented Supreme Court action of the validity of the loan paid by the party's investment arm, Valpoint.
Point of order. The member is within the parameters of the debate, I believe. Is that a reflection on the chair? Member for Pascoe Vale to resume.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I'm literally going to the very essence of what is related to this bill, which is donor money, political party fundraising money, and how it's being deployed and used. That's the essence of this bill. We're seeking to minimise caps, increase transparency, and as part of that, it's important to note that given the Liberal Party are opposing this bill, to call out and understand the reasons why they're opposing the merits of this bill. And it is because I am arguing, putting to the House, that it has a lot to do with the way in which they are utilising their own fundraising money for legal purposes, not campaign purposes. And again, the Sharon Deary article goes that very, very eloquently, and I encourage everyone to have a look at that if they get the chance. But basically, our changes under these new laws will cap donations at $7,500 over 4 years, an interim cap of $5,030 for 2026 period. All foreign donations will be banned. Anonymous donations above $1,250 will be prohibited. Donations of $1,250 or more must be disclosed in real time. New candidates and parties will be able to receive double the standard cap to get a foothold. Essentially, this is about integrity, transparency, and strengthening our democracy and voting system.
The member for Ringwood.